And what we have concluded is that if our friends in Washington and some of our friends in various states would get out of the way, we could get this job done. Miraculously, the lights would stay on, power costs would be reasonable, everybody would move in their own directions.
And while we will argue amongst ourselves, particularly at EEI, on what the right answer is and how to sometimes plow our way through the regulatory morass that Mike so eloquently described, it is with the same objective. We all want to ultimately get cleaner. We want to keep our costs down. We want to be reliable. It's just trying to figure out what's the right path to getting there, particularly in a world where the rules, we don't have an energy policy in our country. The rules of the game seem to keep changing. And there's a lot of promising technology, but much of it is not, it's just nice laboratory technology. It hasn't really been proven at scale. Any attempt to modernize our nation's fleet is really going to cost customers dearly in terms of higher costs. Now, I want to be clear. I have my own concerns about the EPA, and we all want reasonable action by the EPA, and I think that's possible. We do have an administrator who listens these days. We've heard President Obama talk about we've got to really look at everything we do from a regulatory standpoint, from a standpoint of cost-benefit. Easier said than done, and everybody's costs and benefits sometimes are different, and that's kind of the point I want to get to. There's clearly a cost to modernizing our generation fleet, but I frankly don't believe that replacing 50 to 60-year-old fossil plants with new, much more efficient, much cleaner, much more modern generating assets is going to be the train wreck that some people describe it to be. In fact, I think a better analogy is putting a far more efficient engine in front of the train and running it cleaner and more efficiently.
At Dominion and all across the country, we're going to still have nuclear, we're going to still have coal, we're still going to have natural gas. And the pieces of the pie may move over time, but in the end you're going to need all of those because that's the only way it's going to work. Conservation is important, efficiency is important, but that's never going to solve the problems. I think everybody in our industry knows that. We all do what we can to make our systems more efficient, make our customers more aware, try to educate them on what they can do. But it's not going to solve the problem, and it's a complete happy talk to think that it will. So our process has been to say, well, if we're going to have all, the food group is all still going to be there 10, 20, 30 years from now, then that's what we're going to do. So right now we have under construction a coal plant, a gas-fired plant. We're going to build another gas-fired plant. We've built some renewables. We're looking at offshore wind, which is an interesting possibility off the Virginia coast. We expect to spend about over $10 billion over the next 5 years, all just on growth projects across our regulated utilities, largely Virginia Power, but a great deal of it, almost $2 billion of that will be spent just trying to develop a Marcellus Shale region infrastructure.
We came into 2009 and like everybody got whacked pretty hard on overall throughput as well as our off-system sales, which had been as much as $1 billion of revenue for our system, trailing off to about $350 million. So the impact of the dip in 2009 was very dramatic, more in our eastern 7 states than our western 4 states, but nonetheless significant. In 2010, we had forecasted a recovery. The analysts were constantly asking about growth, and I would tell them that there will be growth in the electric utility industry because the electrification of the United States and the world will continue apace, but that we see 2010 as a recovery year at best. What we're forecasting for 2011 is additional recovery along with some growth, particularly in the industrial sector, as we begin to see additional metal melting and paper making and those kinds of activities come back to our service territory.
When you think about something as fundamental as what impacts their standard of living and what impacts from a from a sense of what's their energy share as a percent of their disposable income. These are critically important issues. When you think about the importance of our product to economic development in the region, our industrial sales were up 8% last year. So our economy, it typically does in the Southeast, looks pretty good. So I think the kind of three things that I think we look for are really kind of what I said in some of my opening remarks. Let's make sure that the voters / our customers are spoken for in terms of providing reliable service with low price and the best customer service possible. So that premise of our business model has always got to be front and central. Translated on a national policy level, it looks like jobs in the economy. To the extent there are pressures which cause us to hurt jobs in the economy, then that's something that we're going to have to manage very carefully. So number one is look after the interests of customers. Number two, I guess, would be this whole notion of transitioning the energy fleet of America. Look, there's no question that we can do that, but we got to do it in the right way in the right time frames. And we've got to take into account a whole balancing of what sound like sustainability initiatives. The fact that we want to make sure that there is a credible source of energy, that it has an economic consequence that's reasonable to people, and that the environmental impacts are managed as well as they possibly can be managed.